Dr. Stephen Greer.
Thank you. It's good to see you. Thank you for your help. I appreciate it.
Thank you. The last time I saw you was probably about 2 years ago.
Right.
And we had a series of interviews where you went deep into a lot of topics dealing with disclosure and ET and technology and potential advanced technologies from outer space and so forth.
Right.
A lot has happened since then.
Correct.
I mean, you've always been ahead of your time, obviously. But some of the stuff you told me just a couple of years ago have now come to fruition, which is really, really amazing. I want to first start by introducing some of the people on my networks may not have seen you before. If they haven't, they're crazy. But now that they're finally learning who you are for the first time, just tell them a little bit about your background and how you got started in disclosure.
Well, I'm an emergency doctor and worked in emergency medicine and trauma. But, I had an experience with one of these objects when I was younger. Always had a lifelong interest. My first sighting, I was 8 maybe in North Carolina before you were born in 1963. But it was quite remarkable. Daytime, close up, clearly an extraterrestrial vehicle, seamless. And so I had an interest my entire life. And eventually in 1990, I started the 𝗖𝗘𝗍 Contact Initiative, which there's an app called 𝗖𝗘 Contact you can get that is an outreach program from humans to these civilizations to create a peaceful dialogue and liaison between humans and these civilizations. Because frankly, in studying this up to that point, I realized that the United States and other governments had dropped the ball. They had military relationship, had kept it secret, and nobody was paying attention to the fact that the UFOs themselves are just like a car that brought you here. Who's inside the car? Billy is. Or who's inside these spacecraft? Why are they here? And so that was the genesis of it. Now, in 1992, on a beach in Florida near Pensacola, we had a major event, 𝗖𝗘𝗍 contact event. There were 4 ET craft in the sky that were seen by about 60 people on a training expedition we were doing, including a couple of Air Force colonels and pilots. And that made it onto the front page of the Pensacola paper, the photo. That then led to people in the intelligence community contacting me, some friendly people and some hostile people. But that sort of opened that whole vein to it. And then a year later, when President Clinton became sworn in 93, I was asked by the director of a think tank here near the Pentagon to set up attend a briefing for the director of the CIA. Then at that time, 𝗷𝗲𝗄𝗏 for the president, under cover of a dinner party with me and my wife and the host and his wife and the CIA director and his wife. And it was at that time I learned, my life turned upside down 30 years ago, because I realized that the president and the director of the CIA and then others I subsequently met with were being blocked from information on this subject, and that the organization running these covert programs were doing so without oversight from the Congress or the president, and were therefore illegal and unconstitutional. So that really was the genesis of the Disclosure Project. In those days, we called it Project Starlight. If you look at the Clinton Library was sued by AP and Associated Press, and they released these documents. And so it was initially a private briefing process that I did in my spare time as an emergency doctor, meeting with various members of Congress, people at the Pentagon, elsewhere, to get this information to them and to encourage disclosure of it by the U.S. government. So the genesis of this goes all the way back to the early 1990s, 30 years ago.
Yeah, that's incredible. And I know when I talked to you on the phone just maybe a few weeks ago, building up to this live, interview, you had mentioned that you had to start taking some of these government officials and some of these witnesses through the skiff. Can you talk about that? Are you able to talk about that on live here?
I can. I have to be careful. So about 16 months ago, a very senior person in the intelligence community here, who works literally with the black budget and oversees the 3-letter agencies, CIA, NSA, NRO, reached out to me because a law previously had been passed, as you know, by the Congress to get a report done on UFOs and UAPs, whatever the name of the day is,
right.
And to basically find out what was going on with this. So once the Pentagon confirmed the tic-tac footage and this UFO footage, very quickly there were people in the Congress, like Senator Gillibrand and others, who put through a law requiring the Director of National Intelligence as well as the Pentagon to report on this. So those folks had been going, I'll be blunt, they had been gaslit. The people doing the investigations, who were, of course, not members of Congress, these are senior people in the intelligence community and staff, and they were basically being given no information, which is predictable. This is what we ran into in the 90s. So they contacted me and asked me to help provide what's called actionable intelligence details of where these facilities are, where these projects are centered, who's involved, what are the project code names and numbers, which I have, and a number of these sort of issues. So, we're a non-governmental entity. I have no legal standing, to be frank, but, we have collected all this over 30 years. It's an enormous archive of intelligence information. It's the largest in the world by far. And so we had meetings where I would provide this, and then they subsequently had field people out in the field go and confirm it. So they were able to confirm what we were saying, that there were both extraterrestrial and man-made UFOs. The bigger secret are the man-made secret technologies that would get us off the environment crisis and fix the environment and poverty, but that they were still being blocked access into these facilities. Now, these are people with top secret, special compartmented information clearances at the highest level. And, again, I said yes, because the organization doing this does not respect the authority of the legal constitutional government of the United States. This is not a conspiracy theory. It's a fact, and it's dangerous. So once, this is now, I realized that in '93. Now there are senior members in the US government, in the Congress and White House realizing this is the case. And so the big question becomes, what are you going to do about it? So I said, here's what I think you should do. And they sent field people out, and they were able to confirm what we had been saying through the information. So we were giving them for example, we're going to release, and you're going to all see this this weekend at our 2-day conference, but also at the National Press Club on June 12th from 2 to 4 p.m. The whole world can see that for free. The facilities list. And so I provided this to these investigators in the government. And there are 145 top secret facilities or bases where these operations have gone, as well as corporate locations. So which corporations are involved, where's the reverse engineering taking place, et cetera. So all of that was started 16 months ago. Now, what has helped more recently is that the Congress and the president put through a bill 2 days before Christmas in 2022, the National Defense Authorization Act, that had a provision for top secret people, whistleblowers, or people who had non-disclosure agreements in the military or even corporate world to go through a process where they would go to this office, AARO, and the SCIF there near the Pentagon, and provide their information. So that process the law was passed late December 2022. The first folks started going in January. And so I've been helping coordinate that and also very clearly encouraging whistleblowers to come forward. Now, we have to make a distinction here. There are really 3 categories of these whistleblowers. People who will not come forward because they're hostile to having this come out because they're part of the, I hate to say it, illegal project. Then there are the ones who are cooperating, giving us information, but they don't want to come forward yet because the laws need to be tightened up for their personal protection and security, because many have gotten death threats. Their security around their pensions or their financial assets, and also where it's very clear that if if they were found to have done something illegal, that there'd be a period of amnesty.
Gotcha.
So we're recommending a further bill be passed to provide these sort of protections for these whistleblowers. And then there's another category, and those are the people who are willing to go through the process now and go to the SCIF and provide information.
Right.
Now, out of a few of those, there are a handful that are willing to come out publicly.
Gotcha.
Okay, at this press conference.
Right.
So you're dealing a distillation. So it's now they'll give you a number.
Yeah.
We now have 752 whistleblowers and witnesses that we have either previously interviewed or identified or have contacts to.
Right.
And some are preeminent.
Right.
For example, there's a senior official in a Fortune 100 company that would like to share what he knows, but recently, after reaching out, he has had explicit threats, death threats to himself and his family. So this is why we're encouraging the Congress and the President to step up the pace of the protective laws for these people's security and safety.
Right, that's phenomenal. And just for the viewers, the SCIF, when we say the SCIF, can you break it down for them? Because we know what it is, but
well, SCIF is a secure compartmented information facility. So they're all around the city and other parts of the United States. And they're basically places where when you go in, you put your phones and all electronics aside. It's a sealed facility, so no electromagnetic signals can go in or out.
Right.
And it's a place where top secret information can be exchanged and shared in a secure fashion.
Exactly.
That's basically what a SCIF is.
Kind of like
it's
a
not a
neutral
boat,
ground.
folks.
Yes, not. Yes, not.
There's a SCIF that's a boat. It's something else.
Right. This is really top secret. This is where you can really share information and knowing that nobody can hack into it. Nobody can record it. They can't use those sophisticated cameras with those sophisticated mics outside the building to hear what's inside. Everything bounces off. It's pretty secure, which is very good.
It's not secure from this illegal group because they're using. Let me just make. They
have some really high tech.
They have what are called scalar or longitudinal electromagnetic systems that can penetrate anywhere. Right. And this is one of the problems we've had is getting the people in the conventional government, it's called the legal government, to understand these other operations have technologies, many of them reverse engineered from extraterrestrial vehicles, we'll get into this, that are thousands of years past what the president or the chairman of XYZ committee in the Congress would know about. And this is what I call the technology gap. It's a disconnect. Right. And it's dangerous because if you don't know what your adversary has the capability to do, then you're not going to strategically make the right decisions. Right. So what I've been trying to get them to understand is that their current SecOps, security operation protocols, and these SecOps are simply inadequate. And therefore, they need to understand that whatever it is they're doing is going to be transparently known and seen by the folks who they consider not cooperative, let's call it that way, and not cooperative to the point of I would use the word, and these folks have agreed with me when I've used it, are involved in a treasonous operation. Treason. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I agree. I've heard you say that before, as a matter of fact. And so you'll be talking about this scalar technology this weekend at the conference, right?
Yes, we have a PhD physicist had been, I believe, at Los Alamos, and he is a probably world expert on scalar. Of course, Nikola Tesla talked about scalar waves back 100 years ago, but he'll be making a brief presentation, and then one of our witnesses, who was with Raytheon at a covert facility at South Pole, he's going to talk about the sort of a application of that. It's called a neutrino light sensors and array that's a couple miles underneath the ice at the South Pole, where he worked at that station, and what that capability, the capability of that array is. Right. It's both, I will tell you, it's both tracking and sensing and an active weapon system, which is quite advanced electromagnetic weapon, and rather dangerous.
Yeah, wow, that's powerful. Neutrinos.
Neutrino light.
Neutrino light.
Detector and array.
Wow.
Now, by the way, back in the mid to early 1990s, I met a man who was CEO of an electronics company who in the 70s had invented a neutrino light detector that got a national security order placed on it, and the National Reconnaissance Office seized it under national security order, and they put them on the satellites that are up there so that they can track and monitor these extraterrestrial vehicles as they come out of, let's call it, trans-dimensional space-time into 3D. And when they do that, there's a burst of neutrino light, and that allows them to pick up on them. And so those are then connected to weapon systems. And you hear about all these crash retrievals. Well, now in our archive, we have 121 incidences that we've documented, many with whistleblowers still living, of these objects being tracked, hit, and downed that are extraterrestrial. So, which is another whole discussion, and that is the danger of having an unsupervised and unauthorized operation with those kind of technologies that are really creating an existential threat to all life on Earth. I will say it very bluntly. It's a very dangerous, nonsensical thing happening. I've known about this since the early 90s. It's one of the chief reasons back in, oh gosh, when the head of the Defense Intelligence Agency, whom I briefed, General Patrick Hughes, he's a 3-star, and he had been denied access to this information. Now, this is the head of, for those who don't know, the Defense Intelligence Agency would be like the CIA for civilian for the entire military. And this guy is the top guy. And I did a briefing in his conference room at the Pentagon, and he flat out told me he was denied access, and he thought that there were actions being taken that were dangerous. I said, oh, you better believe it. And I discussed this with him, the fact that we were tracking and targeting these objects who are frankly completely not hostile. But I will tell you, the fact that they're not hostile towards humans and Earth does not mean that they are happy with what this clandestine group is doing. Because we're actually, if people want to know where the threat is, go look in the mirror. Humans have become an existential threat to ourselves with what we're doing to this planet, environmentally and otherwise, but also now potentially to other planets. So I think that this is a very complex problem. And one of the big problems with the news media, everything has to be boiled down into a 30 to 90 second soundbite. And the issue is so complex. And by the way, it's another problem with members of the Congress and White House, is that they're so busy, and yet the issue has to get unpacked. One of the things we're trying to do, we haven't done it yet, is that we're going to unveil what we're calling the Disclosure Project Intelligence Archive, which is many terabytes of data. But what needs to happen, anybody out there, we need someone who's a very good data file manager who can then organize these hard drives and information, and that we can then, what we eventually would like to do is have a website that would be the clearinghouse for all legitimate information on the subject. But we're not there yet. Of course, I can't even imagine what that might cost, and we would have to raise the funds. But there are a lot of technical obstacles to doing it, just because it's a massive. We may eventually have somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 to 20 terabytes.
Wow, that's a lot of data.
Which is a huge amount for a website, and also a searchable website where it's all indexed and searchable. So this is a technical problem. I'm a doctor and not a tech guy, but we need some really good tech people to help us with that.
I may have some people on my team that can help with that. With the project that I've done with searching for space anomalies, we've downloaded over 1 million images from the NASA and European Space Agency Caltech servers, and cataloged them and categorized about 50 to 60,000 anomalies that are searchable, linkable, downloadable, and everything else. We did over the course of 7 years. But we do have the capability of doing something like that.
We want to stand this up in the next year. And we're still collecting data. I will tell you, there's on average 2 to 4 new top secret whistleblowers coming into our system every month. We're adding a similar number of top secret facilities. Let me give people an idea so this is not vague. There's a man who is going to be speaking here. He was an Army guy at Fort Bragg. He was taken into an underground facility where there was a kind of a sonic electromagnetic anti-gravity operation with this massive, thousands and thousands of pounds heavy, looked like a granite cubic rectangular object floating.
Wow.
And he knew the name of the area where it is. So see, every time one of these whistleblowers comes forward who've actually been in the system, whether it was an accidental event in his case or worked in it, we grab that information and put it on our facilities list.
Gotcha.
So when you see this facilities list that we're going to be releasing, keep in mind that every dot on that map and everyone in the list is backed up from witness testimony and files.
Right.
But of course, those we can't release without the whistleblower's permission.
Gotcha.
So one of the things that's a problem for me personally is that having debriefed all these hundreds of top secret witnesses, but when they're not willing to come forward publicly, like has recently happened with one of them, what happens is that the best I can do is provide the information, but what we really need is a process, an open hearing. And this, I've had a conversation with a member of Congress in the House, is to have and this is news, to have an open hearing process, not in a skiff, where these witnesses can be subpoenaed and be sworn in under oath and come forward, and the whole public will know about it. Because I think the top secret process is dangerous in the sense that if it's top secret going through a Pentagon office like Arrow, how much of that will ever get out to the American public? How much of it will actually get to the members of Congress? Because I know that there's a letter we have from the chair and co-chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee recently, written in April, where they were very unhappy with the progress and the reporting back out of Arrow to them. I have this letter, and we can show it to you. My assistant can get it to you. And I think this is a big problem because it gets back into is the fox guarding the hen house sort of problem, right? And some of the men that we have taken and that I know have gone into the skiff for Arrow have been extremely unhappy in A, how they were treated, and B, the tendency to cut them off and not let them tell the whole information. So one of our concerns here, and I have an inside track on that very much in the system, is that there's a big concern that the leadership of that office, whether or not they're complying with the law to let these people bring all their evidence and testimony, but also then properly report it up the chain of command to the Congress, which is the entity that has funded and authorized the investigation. So this is something, again, in a democratic republic like the United States or any democracy, there has to be proper oversight of these sort of operations. And I think we have to be very, very vigilant that this doesn't end up being like prior government investigations, which were basically dog and pony shows that furthered the cover up. And I'm actually quite concerned about that from the things I am hearing, not from the rumor mill, or the UFO chat rooms, but from these top secret guys going in, what they tell me afterwards. So we are concerned about that, and I think we have to be vigilant.
What government agencies could have the power to cover up these UFO and UAP crash retrievals and so forth without any oversight from the front government?
All of them. So let me explain how, a little bit of history here. When you start dealing with top secret operations, they're very highly compartmentalized. And there's special access projects. And as you know from our documentary, Unacknowledged, there are ones that are unacknowledged special access projects. Now, within those, and those mean that if you're not in the project, you're not to tell anyone outside of it. Those have been, and not just on the UFO issue, on a number of issues. Around Contra, for example. But now there's a branch of those that went rogue. And the rogue ones don't have any legal oversight. So a lot of people confuse like the black budget of the United States, which is very, very secret. That the legal black budget, it's legal, is known by the president, his guys, and the chief oversight committees and members of the Senate and House. I'm talking about ones that have gone so rogue and black that they're not overseen, but they're enfolded. It's like those Russian folding dolls, you know, where you stack the dolls. I forget what they're called, but
protege dolls.
Yeah, exactly. But they're hidden within other SAPs, other special access projects. And of course, we uncovered this back in the 90s. And so that structure, let's say the architecture of the secrecy, unfortunately, allows for those operations to go completely unsupervised, even by senior members of the Pentagon. For example, General Patrick Hughes, or you all know the memo leaked out from Dr. Davis about my briefing, the head of intelligence for the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Admiral Wilson. That happened because even though he had this very high position, which, you know, he was the J2, he was in charge of intelligence for the Joint Chiefs of Staff.
Right.
And when we gave him some information about this, he made some inquiries. He was not only denied access, he was threatened. And now, you know, people go, how is that possible?
Yeah.
Now, a lot of people back in the day, when I first said this happened, so this cannot be true. Later, this memo leaked out from Eric Davis. They went, oh God, it was true. Look, you know, some of the things I say, people go, wow, that's really out there, but it's all based on fact.
Yeah.
And it's all true. And people will come to find that what we've been saying in the 90s and 2000s, and now in the 2020s, when it all comes out, every bit of it will be true.
Yeah.
As outrageous, and I will admit, it is outrageous. But if we don't get a handle on this, we're really facing a catastrophe. Yeah. And I mean, we really are, as a people, as a civilization, not only because the technologies that would get us off of fossil fuels and save the biosphere are being withheld, but that there's this rogue element that has weaponized these technologies. And without supervision and knowledge, I can assure you that the people I know in the Congress and the White House have no knowledge of that operation. And Pentagon, General Hughes had no knowledge of that.
Incredible.
Admiral Wilson had no knowledge of it. So when you have that happening, that group really is a threat to world security and national security. Right. So one of the things that I want to remind people, there's this wonderful quote from one of the very first directors of the CIA, who in 1947 was CIA director. And of course, that was the year Roswell happened.
Roswell happened, yeah.
In 1961, after Eisenhower made his speech of beware the military-industrial complex, and it was a veiled reference to this problem, this man, Admiral Roscoe Hillenkoetter, wrote to the New York Times, and he said, quote, I'm paraphrasing actually, he said, the secrecy around UFOs is a threat to the national security, not the UFOs. So when I go into these meetings, I said, I know what you're hearing from the echo chamber of ufology is that we're under some kind of alien invasion. In reality, the secrecy around the subject is a threat to the national security because this group that has run, it's like a Frankenstein we created in the 40s and 50s that's gotten off the table and then is walking amongst us. It's a monstrous operation. Right. And some of the guys that I know who recently have been out in the field trying to penetrate these programs have texted me on encrypted systems and said, wow, these people are thugs. Using the word thugs. I said, oh, absolutely they are. So that's what we've been dealing with now for 30 years. It's good to see there's some people coming forward talking about it. But unfortunately, what has to happen, and this is why we're doing this National Press Club event here, is to frame the issue up to date of what's happening now that these developments have occurred in the Congress, and call for these open hearings. Right. And I think we're going to have a member of the House of Representatives there with us on Monday, who will also make a call for that if his flight gets in on time, he's wanting to come. And he's on a key oversight committee in the House of Representatives. So what I'm hoping is that what we're doing here as a private entity, again, I have no official standing and don't want one. I would not accept a clearance, and I don't need a clearance.
That's just going to hold you back.
Oh yeah, I mean you're in shackles then,
Yeah.
aren't you?
Yeah.
It was offered to me. You know, I told you the story when the head of Army intelligence in 1992 first threatened me and then offered me $2 billion to be part of the board dealing with this, the so-called, you know, Majority Joint Intelligence Committee, MAGIC.
Yeah.
And I said, no, thank you. But, and that was when, that was a lot of money, $2 billion. I mean, it'd be a lot now, but in 1992.
That's a lot of money back then.
And it was all black money, illegally gotten.
Right.
I mean, you can believe the mechanism for the funding, which we're also going to expose this weekend.
Nice. Yeah, probably illegal arms, drugs, you name it, the whole.
Oh, it is all drug running.
Yeah.
Criminal operations.
Yeah.
Yep. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I tell people this is why there's an attorney, Derek Garcia, who has come forward. I've sort of been mentoring him since he was 21 maybe, when he was at Wesleyan. He's now an attorney, public interest attorney in Albuquerque.
Wow.
And he has graciously, on his own time, organized now 50 lawyers to represent our whistleblowers, to defend them, but also to launch, this is a very big news, a civilian RICO lawsuit. RICO is the Racketeer Influenced Corrupt Organization Act from 1970. It's usually used against organized crime by federal and state law enforcement. But there's a provision for a civilian private organization to invoke it.
Nice.
And that's what we're planning to do, which means we're going to be issuing subpoenas, if we can get it into the certified federal system, against these corporations and individuals who have been involved in this and who have committed various crimes.
Right.
All right. And so we're announcing that this weekend also. And Mr. Garcia will be at the event explaining what that is.
Wow.
Some of the attorneys who have surfaced to be doing this, and it's all pro bono, they're not charging, because we don't have the money to pay 50 attorneys.
Yeah.
You need $50 million. But they're all wonderful people who are devoted to disclosure.
Right.
And are putting their efforts in. And some of them are preeminent. We're still waiting to see which of them want to be publicly identified this weekend.
Yeah.
But some of them are absolutely preeminent attorneys in the United States.
Oh, that's amazing. And this conference is going to be a 3-day event, basically. Well, the press club is going to be Sunday or Monday?
The press club, National Press Club, is Monday from 2 until 4 at the National Press Club, right there near where the JW Marriott is. Okay. And that's where the media, of course, gathers for big press events. Yeah. It's where the 2001 event took place. Yeah. You know, with the first National Press Club event that kicked off the global disclosure movement. Yeah. But this is sort of an update, and with new witnesses, many of them dealing with the human, what have been called alien reproduction vehicles. We have a Raytheon guy from the South Pole. We have a guy who, 2 Raytheon people showed him hovering at Fort Irwin, California. These triangular objects that were anti-gravity, and he's going to be there. Wow. And we have a Marine who was his platoon responded in a humanitarian mission in Indonesia after the earthquake and tsunami in 2009. Yeah. And they were deployed to an area and dropped in by helicopter and came across a 300-foot diameter. Now that's the biggest round as a football field. Yeah. Man-made UFO, and it was all these black ops guys offloading what appeared to be illegal drugs and weapons. Wow. And some trafficking scheme, and they were threatened with being executed. Now we have the names of all 6 of the platoon members. One of them wrote and said he, is in fear of his life. Yeah. I will tell you, all 6 of them were told, if you speak of this, you will be executed. Now, this man who's coming forward, Michael Herrera, is incredibly brave. He was only 19 or 20 when this happened. Yeah. He's about 33 now. He's a very brave person. Very few people have been willing to step forward on that. Yeah. Because it exposes 2 major things. The existence of a secret Air Force capability using these craft from Northrop Grumman and Lockheed and Raytheon and others, but also this rogue, most dangerous part of the rogue operation, that it's globally breaking all kinds of laws and engaged in violent crimes, drug running, and clearly criminal activities.
You know, this disclosure movement is really so important because, like you just talked about, the amount of crimes that are involved for them to create these black budget projects and these secret projects, these unacknowledged projects, in order to keep it running and funded, they have to do so much dark stuff to keep it going, which is a complete threat to humanity and the planet.
Well, not to mention the Constitution and the rule of law.
Right.
I mean, if we don't have the rule of law, what are we living in the jungle again?
Right.
Aren't we?
Yeah.
So, I mean, this becomes sort of a civilizational crisis, in my opinion.
Yeah.
It way exceeds the risk of China, Russia, Ukraine, Iran, but it isn't on the radar fully yet by the members of Congress or other capitals and leaders or the United Nations or the White House. This is, there's this the reason I've always been in a hurry to do this is that I know that if this stays on the course it's on, where it's going to end up. And it's not going to be nice. It's going to be a catastrophe.
Exactly. You know, when you're looking at this, you know, all these black budget projects and what they're holding back technologically from the world, what other types of technologies or what types of benefits of the technology could be released to mankind that you feel are being held back?
Well, you know, we just released a few days ago a documentary film called The Lost Century and How to Reclaim It. The key thing, how to reclaim it. And the Lost Century is an expose of 100 years, is what I call it, the Lost Century, of since the time of Tesla, of very advanced technologies that have been seized and sequestered, inventors have been assassinated, and the patent laws have been abused to seize them under national security provisions. I have a copy of one that we show in the film. So everyone can right now go and see that film. It's on all platforms, iTunes, Apple, Google, Amazon, whatever.
Right.
Now, the reason that's so important, it outlines what we've lost in 100 years, but also, importantly, I'm one of these people, I don't like to just kvetch about a problem.
Right.
I think we need to say, what's the solution?
Exactly.
All right. So that was the Disclosure Project is the solution to these illegal secrecy. In this film, we talk about what the solution should be, the pathway to develop or acquire. If anyone listening has one of these 0-point or quantum energy devices, contact us immediately. We have people with funding in place to get it out now, if we can prove it. It's ready. I mean, it's substantial funding. So, but it has to be released open source.
Yes, that's the only way. Open source is the only way.
Open source is the only way, because if you go through patent or intellectual property secrets, it's going to get seized. Now, most of these inventors, here's the problem. They're very, very bright with physics or electromagnetic engineering, but they don't understand the strategic landscape and the security landscape. And what I want to do is combine what our expertise on the strategic and security landscape, so we can get out safely with the people who have the genius in engineering and physics to create preferably a solid state version, which of course 𝗬𝗏 had. If you look up in our movie, you'll see this whole expose about 𝗬𝗏's device, which was real. But I think that when you look at that, what are the implications of all that being disclosed? Just that. It would end poverty on the planet in 20 years. And I'm not talking, poverty in the United States is not poverty.
That's not real poverty.
India and Africa and South America and parts of Asia and South America. So, you know, right now there are 3 billion people on the earth that have no means to even cook their food. They're cutting down the forest and the desert shrubs to make charcoal. So it's a huge problem. And so I think one of the big questions is, if we can bring these technologies out, given the internet and it's open source, then thousands of companies will spring up, just like the internet was open source. Thousands of tech companies sprung up and created hundreds of trillions of dollars in industries, everything from Amazon to Alphabet to whatever. So when this happens, it'll be a tide that lifts the whole world up. Now, it will also end all pollution on Earth. I mean, literally all pollution, air, water, ground. Because these technologies, because they're, quote, free energy, and there's a chairman of a major corporation in America who wants to come forward, who has said point blank, yes, we have those free energy devices to us. Now, he's afraid to come forward because these corporate thugs are more dangerous than the assassins out of the CIA, trust me. So I think that this is something that if the people unite around that effort, we should be able to create a civilization within 10 to 20 years where there would be no poverty, no pollution, sustainability, but wouldn't be just, windmills and solar panels, which ain't going to get us there.
No.
It's the energy density, and it's so expensive. This would be something quite inexpensive, would fit on your table, run your house, run your factory, run your car, and would have zero energy costs and no pollution because it's pulling energy out of the fabric of space-time, what's called the quantum vacuum or zero-point energy, which was proven, by the way, in the 50s by Professor Casimir. So this documentary, I encourage everyone to look at as soon as possible. It's called The Lost Century and How to Reclaim It. We actually have motion graphics to show what the world looks like in 20 years, 50 years, 100 years, 1,000 years.
It was beautiful.
Yeah, have you seen it?
Yeah, The Lost Century. Yeah, so I've seen it. You gave me the link about 2 weeks ago. Yeah, and I watched it. Amazing guys, make sure you go watch The Lost Century. You can watch it on Apple. You can watch it pretty much on anything. The Lost Century, Dr. Stephen Greer. It's an amazing documentary. The way that you did the graphics in there to show those projections, because it gives a person like the ability to kind of see the future, what it could be. What are we missing here?
And that's what we could have had by, the irony of all of this. By the time I was born in 1955, I turned 68 later this month. All of those technologies were in existence. The zero-point free energy, the electrogravitic anti-gravity that was mastered in October 1954.
Wow.
How do I know this? The top scientists at the world's largest Department of Defense lab here, the Naval Research Labs, which Thomas Edison started, when he was in one of the vaults, he saw the documentation that stated we mastered gravity control, anti-gravity, October 1954. So I was born in June 1955. So by the time I was born, we should not have had jet engines, rockets, cars with internal combustion engines, coal, gas, oil, nuclear, wind, solar, geothermal, all of it. Now, the good news is it's like the ET said to Colonel Corso when he said, "What's in this for me?" And the ET said, "A new world if you can take it." But who's going to be the losers here? Well, you do have hundreds of trillions of dollars in assets in petrodollar and oil and gas, public utilities. So one of the problems with this is when people talk about a disruptive technology like, a ride app, like Uber or Lyft. I mean, it replaced taxis. But this would totally transform the planet, but there will be people who will be disrupted. Okay, and I think now not the big corporations that have already made thousands of trillions of dollars over 150 years, but the average worker. Let's say you're an oil rig worker or a public utility worker. There needs to be a plan that as these technologies come out, we provide the training and support to transition them from those smokestack industries to this new high-tech energy sector. Because there will be huge jobs resulting from that. But we have to think this through. And it needs to be compassionate to the rank and file people who would be adversely affected.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's something I've said for 25, 30 years. But that can be done. I mean, we can absolutely do that as a people, not here, but just globally. Globally, we can come together as a people and do this. But ultimately, it will grow the economy and the world's poverty. I predict in about 20 years would be gone.
Completely gone.
All Africa, everywhere. So this is very good. I always tell people, this is extremely. This is why I'm such an optimist. I know these exist, and I know what the world will look like when it can be disclosed. And it really, I have now 12 grandchildren and 4 daughters. Congrats. It would be a whole new world if this could happen, and it would be a wonderful world if they're used for peace.
Exactly.
Now, I will say, caveat, in my conversations with people in the military connected to these projects, I agree that the propulsion systems should remain classified. Now, what do I mean there? If you have an object like that tic-tac, that's 𝗏𝗏𝗃 by the way.
Yeah, I
It
believe
was not extraterrestrial.
Yeah.
Newsflash, we know who made it, where it came from.
Yeah, it's not alien.
No. And we have a top secret witness who actually in 1991 saw that thing being offloaded from a C-130 transport vehicle in the Azores.
Oh, man.
Oh, yeah. You're going to see the drawing of this. He doesn't want to come forward yet. He's scared.
Okay.
But he absolutely saw it. And we have another account of that identical object from multiple witnesses from 1967 in Pennsylvania.
Wow.
So that's an old one.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So now I know that when I've spoken to people like 𝗍𝗶𝗱𝗄, who is the F-18 Hornet pilot, he insists there's no way we had anything that could move like that. But of course, he was a jet pilot. Yeah. And he wasn't read into these compartmented operations. So, I always let people have their opinion. But, to be honest with you, if you haven't been briefed up to that level, and if chairman of the Senate Intelligence and Armed Services and White House presidents and generals haven't been told, I'm quite sure a pilot in the Navy would not have been read in. No. So I think this is for the disconnect, because it seems so unbelievable to people who are your conventional pilots and military folks. But the truth is that that's the nature of top secret, special, compartmented information. Is highly compartmented. But I think that is why the significance of disclosure is not just to correct these legal and other problems. It's really to transform the way humans live on the planet in preparation for humans becoming interstellar. Gotcha. So, I mean, there's a long-term trajectory that if we don't muck up the whole situation, right, and create an extinction level event from our stupidity, we have this amazing boundless future that's so beautiful waiting for us.
Oh, it can be incredible.
Oh, it is. It will be. I've seen it.
I'm optimistic as well. I don't believe in the doom and gloom. It's coming to an end and it's the end times. I really don't believe in that. And this is the best time to be alive. And I think that we're on the precipice, and people like you are really pushing the forefront in getting us to the level where we can break through and usher ourselves back to a golden age. And I think we will definitely do it, because we've done it before.
Global golden age. Yes. It'd be like the Shambhala kingdom, the mythical, I think it might have existed. That was in that small area of the planet for the whole planet. Yeah. Because once we reach the point where there's no poverty and there's superabundance, people can then turn their attention towards creative pursuits, the development of higher states of consciousness, meditative states, travel through space peacefully. The trick here, however, with humans is that in these covert programs, the tragedy is these wonderful technologies that could be used for good have been turned to war. And if you look at the course of human history in the modern technological era, almost every breakthrough, atomic, nuclear, had its first application in a weapon system. And so the problem that's got to get fixed, and this gets to be a very important social, even spiritual, civilizational discussion, is all this is poised. It is coming out. This is all coming out. We know this is coming out. I'm going to say something a little bit that's dangerous, but I'll be discreet in how I describe it. But this is all going to come out one way or another. The question is, we need to begin having the conversation with global leaders. That's why I'm reaching out to people in the UK and other countries about what does this look like going after all this is then known. Is it another arms race? Do we take these technologies and weaponize them? Do we weaponize them against extraterrestrial peoples, which has already happened? We have to be very careful, because once you cross the nuclear threshold, past the nuclear into these technologies, they are potentially significantly more lethal than a hydrogen bomb. And so we have to begin to ask the question, what are we going to be when we grow up
Yeah.
as a species?
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
we're sort of in an adolescent rambunctious phase,
Yeah.
right? And unruly humans.
Yeah.
But if we reach this point of maturity and what's been called a level 1 civilization, 𝗕𝗁𝗃𝗃 and others, where we're peaceful globally, we're fixing the environment, then there's hundreds of thousands of years potentially of unbroken evolution and exploration.
Yeah.
But if we don't get this right, I will tell you, it is the end.
Yeah.
We're going to hit an extinction level event. So when I say that the stakes involved with this cannot be overstated in their importance, I mean it. It absolutely it cannot be overstated.
No, you're right. There are theoretical physicists and astrophysicists that have claimed that based on just sheer numbers and civilizations that are out there in our own Milky Way, they've reached a high level and have actually destroyed themselves. There could be literally thousands or maybe even millions of destroyed planets out there where the people destroyed themselves and they're just sitting there barren wastelands.
Well, some people think that happened on Mars very, very long, millions of years ago. There's some evidence for that. So, you know, there are lessons here. You know, we need to learn from history or we're going to repeat it.
Yeah.
But I think the extraterrestrial civilizations currently involved with surveilling and looking at the Earth, a lot of people ask, why are they always around our atomic and nuclear facilities? Roswell, let's not forget, was the 509th Bomber Squadron, only place in the world, where there was an atomic bomb in 1947. What were the ET so concerned about? Because they have seen this happen, where we get on that path, we stay on that path, and that civilization is extinct. But they also know that once you get on that path, it's not far to go to the next level where you then have interstellar, these so-called trans-dimensional technologies that allow for space travel.
Right.
Because space travel has to be many, many times the speed of light. We understand how that happens. If you want to visualize a piece of paper, here's a point here, 1,000 light years is another point. You're not going this way, you're folding the piece of paper, space-time. You're folding it. That's how you do it. We know how this happens. It's called entanglement, quantum entanglement, but on a macro scale with the whole spacecraft. So basically, when you reach that point, if you're still violent and savage, like humans are, you're now a threat elsewhere.
That's right.
See, so I always tell people, humans tend to be extremely narcissistic, and they don't do well looking through the eyes of others, which is to me the heart of compassion of the Buddha. You have to be able to look at, how does this look, this enterprise on Earth right now, look to an advanced civilization that has come this way before us and survived? I'm afraid that we look like we're in great trouble, and I think we are. You know, I joked back in the 90s, I'm an emergency doctor, and I know an emergency when I see one.
Right.
and we are in a global emergency writ large. But most people are not awake to that yet. And I think part of what the Disclosure Project is devoted to doing is putting out the evidence and the information, but also a vision of how to be awake to this, but not just get into negative conspiracy stuff, but turn it into a positive outcome. Socially, technologically, and economically, spiritually. So I think those are all big undertakings that need to, the conversation on that needs to be joined now.
Definitely. How do you think, and this will be the last question before we close, but how do you think this disclosure, excuse me, can actually help, how can disclosure actually help with the prevention of government agencies like the Pentagon giving these private corporations these contracted jobs so they can hide them, and then we can't get a FOIA. We can't request information on these because they're private. Do you think that we'll see a day when this communication or this collaboration or collusion that's happening to keep these things secreted away and compartmentalized, do you think there'll be a day when we can break that reign that they've got on that and make it to where we have access to see what's happening?
If we can get these open hearings, or even if there is a classified process first that leads to open, we have the people who can blow the whistle on that, how it's structured, and then there could be reforms in the law that prevent it. I do know that a clock has been put on this, and this is the sensitive thing I didn't refer to, and I have to be very careful. But I'm working with a number of teams here in Washington who don't know each other.
Okay.
All right. And advising and providing evidence and information to them. But there's one team that absolutely is hoping this gets resolved through the constitutional process, through what we're doing, perhaps with this RICO civilian lawsuit. If there are any attorneys out there who want to join us, contact us. You'll see that we have 50 some attorneys now. We can use more with different specialties. We also need private investigators, former prosecutors, etc. But I think that when we look at that, if that can't get resolved by pretty much the end of this year or early next year, there are some folks who are very fed up in the special operations and forces community that are going to move. But that can be dangerous and could result, frankly, in a bloodbath.
Right.
So what we're trying to do is move this very quickly. I know those guys very much hope we succeed and don't have to do what they've been chartered to do.
Right.
So I'm only referring to this obliquely to say that, you know, having been involved with this for 30 years, well, first of all, I won't be alive 30 more years, but I know that this process needs to actually come to a head in a proper channel. You know, constitutional, legal oversight, White House, other countries. I'm having conversations with people connected to very senior government in the United Kingdom and elsewhere. But I think this is why we need to understand that this needs to be taken very, very seriously by people in the UAP community, but also come together to do it in a coherent way. Right. And the more, I will also make an appeal, any of you who know or are folks who've been involved with this, with a corporation or intelligence or military operation, should contact us, because the more people who come together, I think a very poor way to do this are lone wolves coming out one at a time. But when you come together as a group, these are people who don't know each other, but have different parts of this picture from different agencies, services, corporations. That's what we're doing this week and weekend at the National Press Club on Monday. Then what happens, it reinforces each other. Whereas if you have an extraordinary experience as an intelligence operative or military personnel or a Lockheed or Raytheon official, and you do it by yourself, people go, you know, it doesn't seem, you know, like that's possible. Whereas if you have 5 or 10 or 100, I want this to eventually become a torrent instead of a trickle. Where hundreds and then thousands of people just come forward. Now, a lot of people are afraid, let me say this, that they can't do that. I believe they can. And the foundation of the Disclosure Project, which I have not talked about with you much, is the unless otherwise directed letter, UNOD, we wrote to the Clinton administration and all federal agencies in the Pentagon in late 1997, 1998. We gave them 60 days to respond. And the unless otherwise directed is a military technique that basically says, unless otherwise directed, here's my assessment and here's what I'm going to do. It's written that way so no one has to make an overt action. You see. So we did this, and what we said was, these projects are being run illegally. Therefore, the non-disclosure agreements and the secrecy oaths that anyone has taken, corporate or governmental, are completely nullified.
They're invalid. They're
invalid because the underlying operation is illegal. Now, if you're just someone who's a foot soldier in this, a Delta Force guy or a Navy SEAL, or someone who's working at a corporation as a part of this huge operation, you wouldn't know that. We know it because having briefed people like the CI director and senators and senior flag officers, generals, admirals at the Pentagon, we know that it's that way. So we're going to establish that as a proof, right? Now, at that point, everyone is exonerated. That you can leave one of these underground bases with part of an ET craft, an ET body, documents, and your own information with impunity. because until those operations are put under legal oversight by we, the people's government, those projects are illegal. They cannot use the law when they're breaking the law.
Exactly.
This is, I want to say this very forcefully, this is why we need, dozens, then hundreds, and then thousands of people coming forward, basically being liberated by this.
Exactly. It's a snowball rolling down the hill, basically. Once all this begins to happen, it's going to unfold, and there's nobody that can stop it.
And that was always our strategy. I mean, back in, when I tried to get the Congress and the president to do this in the 90s, before we went public in 2001, 22 years ago here in Washington, where we are now, I had hoped that people in Congress would take care of it. I never thought I'd leave my medical career to address this. I've lost over $12 million in income doing this as a doctor, but not that anyone cares about that. But I'm just saying,
it's a real sacrifice.
It's a huge sacrifice for my family.
I mean, come on, that's a real sacrifice
for all the gossips out there. But the point I'm making is that, now that we're at this point where the laws are in place now, which we worked hard, and I gave feedback on this one that was passed in December that allowed the whistleblowers. Initially, that law was going to leave out corporate guys. And I said, oh no, the center of gravity in this is corporate and not government. So I said, we need to get those guys protected too. So that's what we have now. I think, again, the next thing we have to have are more protective laws, that are explicit for their pensions, their personal safety, and amnesty if they were involved in something illegal, so they're not prosecuted if they come forward completely. And then also an open hearing process. I hope it's most likely that a House committee, like the Government Reform and Oversight Committee, which does these sort of investigations, would be the lead investigative committee rather than in the Senate. This is what historically is the case. Now, it could happen under the aegis of any of these authorized committees, frankly. There are probably at least half a dozen committees where this would fall under their purview: money, appropriations, defense, intelligence, oversight, science and technology in the House. There are a number of them that could hold hearings, and maybe the best path would be multiple investigations simultaneously.
Well, I think if one breaks through, then you'll see others then fall in line with it.
But it needs to be, the initial process up to the hearing should be that and I'm going to announce this. This week we have provided the entire Disclosure Project Intelligence Archive with these 752 witnesses, all the facility sites, and a lot of other 121 crash retrieval cases to the Senate, to the White House, to the Pentagon, and on Monday I'll be handing it off personally to a member of Congress for the House of Representatives.
That's amazing.
So that's and here's good news, folks. At this point, there can be no excuses. The U.S. government now will have in their possession everything they need to get to the bottom of this, and I mean everything. Where the northern helicopter base is in the Nevada test range, where they were deployed to retrieve both man-made crashed UFOs and extraterrestrial ones, because the witness who was there gave us that data, and it's in there. So all of that is there now, and now the people, you guys, us, just ordinary folks like me, need to now say, okay, the government must be accountable. They've been given the information. No more excuses. Do it.
At the end of the day, the government actually is supposed to work for us.
Yes.
They've got us tricked into thinking that we work for them.
I know.
And people believe it.
Like they're our masters.
No, exactly. No, they're the servants.
Yes, of course.
We're the bosses.
Correct. And, it's funny because I have my dad was half Native American, and my mom's family were some of the original prisoner of war with the British. My father was hand-to-hand combat on amphibious landing units in World War II in the Pacific, and had terrible PTSD over it, frankly. But who wouldn't? And but I always tell people, this is a time where we need to come together, but instead of a violent enterprise, a peaceful one of disclosure, and the rule of law. But the only way the Congress and the president is going to act is that they hear from you guys. So here's my other request. Please write to your two senators and you're a member of the House of Representatives, your own representative, and to the president, asking them to take action and tell them that the Disclosure Project has provided them all the actual intelligence they need to get to the bottom of this.
Yeah.
You know, we've spent millions of dollars and 30 years assembling this. It's now been handed off on hard drives.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah.
And tell everyone again where this event is this weekend and what they can expect.
Yeah, and so you can give them a link. If you can't be there in person at the JW Marriott on Saturday, tomorrow, the 10th, and Sunday, we're going to have, you know, a huge 12 hours of presentations from the witnesses, from me, from aerospace historian Michael Schratt and others, Dr. 𝗲𝗃. But then on Monday, the 12th, at the National Press Club, we're going to stream live for free globally that entire press club event with the witnesses. Now, that's only an hour and a half presentation, half-hour question and answer.
Yeah.
So the weekend event, you're going to get 10 times more information, obviously, at least 10 times more.
Yeah.
And I encourage people who can't come in person to just get the webinar link, because it gives you, and if you can't see it live, we're going to keep it up there for a couple of months where you can see it at your leisure. Yeah. So I would encourage people to do that. And it also helps defray some of the costs of what we're doing. This year, we're going to spend at least $500,000 on further developing the archive. Confidentially, you know, I've been telling people, I won't say who, but the people we've been bringing to DC to go through the SCIF, we've been paying for their travel, their lodging, their food, their cars, their drivers. This is very expensive, and you know, I'm a retired doctor, not a tech billionaire. Yeah. So we need people's help that way also.
Gotcha. Definitely. Well, the links to this entire event are in the caption of this video. Okay. No matter where you're watching it, click on the link. Make sure you guys register. If you can get here, phenomenal. If you can't, get that webinar link. Click on that link, and also don't forget, tune into the press club. That'll be Monday afternoon. You don't want to miss it. I saw the one that came out in 2001, and it blew me away. It like solidified my mind on what I thought was happening. Was happening.
Right.
And so you don't want, you're alive at a great time right now. Don't miss this press club. Don't miss this conference. You want to see everything that has to be said here. And I love Michael Schratt, by the way. His work is amazing.
Oh, it's beautiful. Oh, well, you know what we've done? You're going to see all this, guys. All these witnesses coming forward, he's dealt with them. I hand them off, and then they describe the craft or the skiff, and he's done all the artwork. Oh man, and it's beautiful. It breaks it come alive. Nice. And also, a lot of that is in the Lost Century. So people who want to, that's out now. It just dropped on Tuesday. This is Friday. Yeah. So go see the Lost Century. It'll give you a good foundation tonight for what's happening this weekend. Absolutely, Dr. Stephen Greer. It's a pleasure, man. Thank you so much. Thank you. Again, another Forbidden exclusive. We have Dr. Stephen Greer here. Don't miss this incredible conference. And again, Monday, the Press Club 2.0 is coming to you live worldwide. Don't miss it. Be a part of the disclosure. Peace. Thank you, guys. Thank you. It's great. Excellent, man. Hey, thank you, sir. Good. Phenomenal. That's great. Yeah. Hope that covered everything.